Greetings and welcome to another edition of The Pedal Shift Project. The Pedal Shift Project is a series of conversations, thoughts, and experiments around the bike touring lifestyle. From tips and tricks to ideas on how to ride your ride. Let's shrink the world by bike. Show notes and more are available at pedalshift.net/298, and you can email the show at pedalshift@pedalshift.net or text me at 202-930-1109 and check Pedal Shift out on all the socials as well. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 298th edition of the Pedal Shift Project. My name's Tim Mooney, and welcome to Day 1, Part 1 of the Empire State Trail Tour Journal. I am very, very excited to present this to all of you. As you would imagine, I am back. I did the tour, and I am back. So a little bit of light housekeeping to kick us off here on the Tour Journal. The first part, as you noticed, this is Day 1, Part 1. The first day is going to get broken up into a couple of parts because otherwise we would have had a stupidly supersized episode. We're going to interrupt this Tour Journal, which is going to go on for a little while now. And we're going to do that at the normal times, the first Thursday of the month for the best ofs. The first time that's going to happen is next week. So you're going to get this part, we're going to get a best of, and then we will continue from there. New to the tour journals this time, you may have noticed I didn't do a bit of social media while on tour. Well, technically I did one. I said that there was going to be the preview episode, but actually I was out there when the preview episode dropped. So I decided to keep the ins and outs of the tour a secret so you can experience it all week to week right here on the pod. Images that I shot, and I got a bunch of them, and a bunch of really cool images from each day will end up on both Instagram and I think on Facebook as well, on or about the launch day for each episode of the podcast. Did this all work out? Did I stick to plan? I don't know. Stick around, find out. So let's load up and head to Buffalo. Good evening. Yes, it is a good evening because I am speaking to you on day 0 from a Chevy Equinox, not the vehicle that you are used to hearing me drive in. This is the rental vehicle that I have, and I was lucky that I got it. Let's back up a little bit. As you would recall, I am driving from Washington, D.C. to Buffalo, New York tonight as the setup for the 9-day Odyssey, the 9-riding day Odyssey, 10 total days for the Empire State Trail 2022. The reasonings I set out in the preview episode, but I'll do a little bit of a review. And that is because I just was a little stressed out by reports of trouble with travel. And it's interesting because I think that the trouble with travel that I had been hearing about was mostly around air travel. But as I leave, I found myself experiencing, I think, the general travel issues that we've all been experiencing throughout this entire process of the beginning of the end of COVID, the middle of the end of the beginning, whatever you want to call it. Let's see. Let's start off with my unresolved stress about the end of the trip. You will hear. You may know this more in the future than I know right now, but there is an impending lockout of rail operators in some way, shape, or form. I'll have to confess I have not done a ton of reading on this. My understanding is that this is a lockout, not a strike. But I am going to need to educate myself a little bit more before I get super authoritative about it. What I do know is that Amtrak is starting to cancel long-haul routes. That typically does not include the Northeast Corridor. However, something tells me that this could get serious enough where there could be staffing issues or whatever that would impact the Northeast Corridor, which would impact my ride home. So I am going to have to look at the possibility of buying a bus ticket, hoping that they would allow me on with my bike. So I'm going to have to do some research on some of the Washington to D.C., the New York to D.C. buses. There are plenty of them that
maybe allow bikes. I have looked at it a million times, and no one is going to say, oh yeah, sure, bring your full-size bike, no problem. They usually say, absolutely not, or, you want to try, sure, go ahead, but we may say no, which of course is a terrible option. So I'm hoping that I can figure out the least bad option for them. And also, I would like it if the rail folks would resolve the labor impasse. That would be even better. But I do think it's worth hedging my bet, because if rail is not an option for people going from New York to DC on the day that I need it, and I do need it, I'm thinking all the buses are going to get snapped up real quick. So I gotta jump on that. The more recent, the more problematic of today problem. Is that a sentence? Today's temporary issue came at the car rental place. I believe I mentioned that the car rental place is in a hotel nearby where I live, and it is a fantastic setup because you basically stroll over there, get the car, drive out, and you're all set. And what was great is I was able to load up the stuff in, and I'm telling the story out of order because you can tell obviously it was resolved because I'm driving in this vehicle right now, right? Well, when I got there at first, though, the question was, hey my dude. They did not say this, but I'm going to say it in my language. Hey my dude, would you like a Tesla? And I was sort of intrigued at first, and then I immediately realized that was going to be a bad option for me. Two reasons. Number one, I am not super familiar with Teslas, but I don't believe that they would be able to fit my bike very easily. I'm sure it's possible. I could take the front wheel off. I could do a bunch of things. Worst case scenario, I could perhaps bungee the trunk shut. But I just didn't know if the seats folded down. I would imagine maybe they do. I just didn't know. But the bigger issue is I am on a long enough road trip that I got to burn dinosaurs, sadly. I just don't think that I would have the time or capacity to try to figure out a charging option mid-ride. Especially given that this is a long ride. I was leaving right around rush hour after my work day was over and my vacation began. I just was like, I said, I'm driving one way to Buffalo tonight. I just don't think it's got the range. And they were like, okay, fine. And then they're like, we're not sure we have another vehicle here. And I'm like, oh. So I'm going to go check. Those words hung in the air like a fart. And I was like, oh, this is not going well. So in my head, I had the train thing for the end of my trip. And then I was like, am I not going to get a car today? Or am I only going to have the option of a Tesla? Blah, 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 blah. Am I going to have to go to the airport, which I hate doing because it's just a lot more of a hassle for me. Anyways, so they go check, and a Chevy Equinox was available. Now, it hadn't been fueled up. I'm not sure if it had gotten fully turned over, but I was perfectly happy with it because if you're not familiar with the Chevy Equinox, it is a mid-sized SUV. And a mid-sized SUV, when you fold those rear seats down, you don't have to do a damn thing to your bike. I just threw the bike in, didn't touch the wheel, nothing. It's lying flat, and there was so much room for my stuff. More than I need, quite frankly. But it does get reasonably great gas mileage. I was actually pretty stunned to figure that out with the mileage gauge and all that other kind of stuff in the vehicle here. So all is going well, and I am, maybe an hour and change away from my midway point where I stop at a Wegmans grocery store. For those of you who are familiar with Western New York and or the other states like Pennsylvania and Virginia and elsewhere where Wegmans are, you know that it's a bit of a cult, and it's where I grew up. My grandmother used to say, before she passed, of course, she remembered when Wegmans was pulled by horses because it was a fruit cart way back in the day when she was a little girl. Anyways, I'm going there for my for a little bit of a snack shopping run, not just for tonight, but also for my morning snacks, my riding snacks, quite frankly. So we'll be doing all of that this evening. So that's about it for day 0. You will not hear from me again on the day 0 stuff. Otherwise, this becomes an interminably long first episode for the tour journal if we end up with a lot of day 0 plus day 1. But just enough to kind of set the table. I am so excited for this ride. I really had a lot of things going on here in the last few days from a work perspective, from a life perspective, and it just is so nice to know that I've got a big, long, glorious ride with beautiful looking weather ahead. I can't tell you how great it's all looking. We'll talk much more about the weather and all of those other things in each of these tour journals rather than giving you the long-term weather forecast, but it does look pretty good. I'm pretty excited for all that. All right, more to come from Buffalo. Next time you'll hear me.
Good morning from day 1, Buffalo, New York. Maybe Amherst, actually. I'm not sure. I'm not sure where the airport is. It's the Buffalo Niagara International Airport. I was told, hey, wouldn't it be a good idea if you went out the entrance? I'm not sure if that was a good idea. We're going to go around here to see if there's actually a service road or a service walkway on the far side of the garage. There kind of is. I don't know if this is a great idea. I think that the gentleman was being kind about distance. I am on the north side of the airport here at the entrance, but the flow of this road, this is probably the worst road I'll have the entire trip, to be honest. But the flow of this is very distinctly not friendly for this direction. And the question ends up being, do I want to risk it going the wrong way on a ramp where people are not going to be expecting me? I think I'm going to stick to plan. I think I'm going to ride through the parking garage here and go with the flow rather than, well, what the hell? Let's give this a shot. I think we're just going to walk it up this hill. All right. This could be the shortest podcast in the history of podcasting. See you on the other side. All right. Well, that was not ideal, but it worked. Advantage to a bicycle, you can go over berms and other things. So that did probably save me at least a couple minutes. So welcome to Genesee Street here in the lovely Buffalo, New York area. Let's see, we'll cross this service road here. All right. So we are at the edge of the Buffalo Niagara International Airport property. It's international because, hello, Canada. And yeah, we're about to get rolling here. This is going to be the portion of the ride that is not technically on the Erie Canal towpath, nor the Empire State Trail. The extra day it would have added probably to go back to, I assume it's Niagara Falls, but it's probably downtown Buffalo. Just wasn't really worth it to me. I mean, this is technically Buffalo. I'm feeling good about that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to work my way up to Lockport, New York, where I have family by marriage, I guess is the best way to put it. But I don't have a relationship with any of them, so I will not be seeing them unless I randomly do. But the scenario is a lot of road work for the first, I'd say, hour or so today. But road work with really nice shouldered routes, which I'm very grateful for. I'm going to be using Ride with GPS for this portion of the ride for sure. And then I will probably not have to deal with it too much. Once I get on the Erie Canal towpath, it's a straight shot through Lockport. I guess I go through Gasport and a few other places. You'll notice a lot of towns with the name port in them, including my hometown of Fairport. That's because they were all actual ports on the Erie Canal. For more of me blathering about the history of the Erie Canal, go back and check out in the spring of 2020. I did a whole bunch of episodes on my Erie Canal ride, and I believe I blathered on incessantly about the history of the canal. I still may do that. I still may voice that upon you, but I'll try to make it the new stuff or signs I read or something along those lines. But it was lovingly referred to as a ditch and a folly back in the day. So, but it was a huge piece of why Buffalo exists, why Rochester exists. All right, let's get rolling. All right, fun bit of audio. We'll be going underneath the runway in a moment here. So I thought I'd take you with me. I'm doing this one-handed. Not recommended. I don't have my phone holder out for reasons that are unclear to me. We're on Arrow Road, which I think is a befitting name. And passing by all sorts of interesting things. The NOAA weather station for Buffalo. But here we go. It probably won't sound much different under here. But 12 feet 7 inches of clearance, so I think it can take normal trucks. All right. Do you hear the difference? I do. Yeah, I think I did this by car on the route scouting trip in Hagerstown, if you remember back to then. But now I'm doing it by bike. Different airport, of course, much bigger airport. I have an entire lane to myself. It is not demarcated for cycling, but it effectively is a bicycle lane. All right, quick in the pocket. All right, I just needed to make sure everything was good here. I don't know if I have to stay on Arrow Drive or not, but I thought I would share that with you. All right, that was fun. It's always interesting to be this close to an airport landing strip. Maybe I'll stick here and watch a plane land. Or not. I've gone a whopping 2 miles so far, but first I have a really interesting little site here, and just like, I mean, you would never know this. I bet very few people in Buffalo know this exists. It's a Garrison Cemetery for folks who died in the War of 1812. My goodness. It was dedicated in 1962 at the sesquicentennial of that battle. That's where basically you Canadians who were still with the Brits at the time came down and burned down the White House. Obviously, everybody's still super stoked about that. Anyways, I always just find that funny that Canadians burned down the White House. We built a new one. Anyways, so a war that does not get a lot of attention, I think, in American history. It was sort of like the echo of the American Revolution from England, and then, went about 50 or so years, and then hostilities arose, and there we go. So there are, maybe a dozen, maybe 20 graves here. I'm not a gravesite person. I'm not a huge war history person, although I ride around a lot of war places. I talk about the Civil War on this pod. I feel like disproportionately to my interest. But interesting, huh? Very interesting. Oh, then they are flying a Union Jack. Interestingly, the Union Jack at full mast and the American flag at full mast. And I believe everything else has been at half mast as a continuation for 9/11, I believe, and perhaps maybe for Queen Elizabeth's passing. I don't know, but not here. Interesting. All right, folks, we're going to keep rolling. Maybe I will record less than once every 1.8 miles. From just north of Williamsville, New York. Williamsville. A few things of note. As I was riding, reflecting on the ride so far, I realized I've ruined the notion that this is a weather podcast with some bicycling mixed in, and a food podcast with some bicycling mixed in. So let's talk a little bit about both. Weather. Weather is stunningly perfect. I believe we may have finally climbed out of the 50s. It's a patchy cloud kind of day. This is a classic, as some of the locals on the sports ball radio station called elite weather season here in Western New York. A few of the trees are starting to turn colors, but that is by far not the predominant thing. We're still in technically astrological summer. Is that how you put it? But we are very much in meteorological fall. And of course, as I ride, we will get into official fall by the end of this. So yeah, we are looking at some really fantastic weather conditions, maybe even a touch warmer than I would prefer on a few days this week. The one day where it's looking like we're going to get rain for sure is on Monday. That is my second day after the zero that I'll be taking day after tomorrow. And unfortunately, it's coinciding with my longest day. Unfortunately, and not such a big deal. I am ending in a hotel that night, and it looks like if the forecast holds that the rain is going to be on the back half of the day, and perhaps may even hold off until after I roll in. I'm expecting that to be a very long day for me. It is 70 miles. I have not ridden 70 miles in a very, very long time. Pre-COVID, I think. And I am not in the best of shape, as we have discussed. Oh, I'm also in a non-bike lane portion here. So I should have really, well, now we're good. I'm taking the right turn lane here. So yeah, the weather, you cannot complain about the weather. Classic Western New York, really the reason why I came up here. It's always mid-September, elite weather season. Let's see, shall we go to, let's go to flags. I am not used to a unanimity of thought in anything regarding flags. Flags tend to be flown with political stuff in mind, and I see that a lot, particularly in West Virginia. But around here, there are a lot of people who don't agree with each other on a bunch of different things. But I will tell you what they all agree on: the Buffalo Bills. There is so much Bills propaganda all around here in Western New York, and I expect that to continue well through the Rochester area, and perhaps bleeding into Syracuse. But that's when kind of allegiances tend to shift a little bit towards New Jersey team interests. I'm joking, of course. It's the New York Football Giants generally at that point. This is not a podcast about sports ball, but it is sometimes about culture, and culture is something that the Buffalo Bills are very much a part of Western New York fabric. I was reflecting on the size of Buffalo and the fact that the National Football League is an enormous multi-billion dollar venture. Perhaps, is it getting into the trillions yet? Maybe. I have no idea. I have no sense, but it's big. And Buffalo, and even regionally Western New York, objectively speaking, doesn't deserve a team in that sense. If they were to reshuffle the deck and start from scratch, I can guarantee you Buffalo wouldn't get a team. But the folks around here, and I'll include myself in this, there's just something about having a unifying thing to rally around. And it's something we used to have, I think, a little bit more with other things. But you know what? Football team is good enough for me, and it's really nice to kind of ride through a space where it's just sort of like, maybe we can't agree on much, but you know what we can agree on? Our dopey, possibly cursed football team that's actually pretty good this year. It might actually be very good. If you have a Bills fan around you, and I can step in and be that for you, we can be insufferable when the team is good. So expect more references. The semi-related element of the Buffalo Bills to the weather is the end of my 0 day the end of my long day, as I mentioned, was Monday night. The Buffalo Bills are playing Monday night, and I will be enjoying watching the game, potentially at a sports bar in a big casino in central New York. So that all depends on A, weather, B, how am I feeling. I will have a hotel room, so it might just be a TV and a pizza kind of night, but I'm kind of hoping that we can get a little bit more than that. We will see. We shall see. But let's see. So we've talked about the weather. We've talked, weather update though. I am catching a little headwind. You may be hearing it. We are going northbound, due north. And so I might be catching some offshore, or is it onshore? I don't know the difference between the two, but the wind's coming off of the lake. Due north of here is Lake Ontario. Due west of me is Lake Erie. That's why this portion of the country can often get a ton of lake effect snow, because you can get hit from two potential different directions. And this is definitely one of those areas. Back on to the other element of this podcast, which is more or less not about cycling. Let's talk a little bit about food. I did have a little breakfast sandwich and a nice coffee to fuel up the day. Thought about getting more, but then thought, you know what? I don't need more. I've got snacks, many snacks, lots of snacks. This morning the live show dropped, and apologize for not getting it out earlier. Hold on, I'm getting a variety of signals from my app that is suggesting that I am off course. So let's check that out. And we are very much on course. All right. Yeah, one thing about Ride with GPS, as a sidebar here, it will sometimes, your GPS signal will deviate a little bit and it will bump you off course when you've been just going straight, my friends. So let's see. Okay, I was going to talk about snacks next. Stopped at Wegmans last night in Williamsport, Pennsylvania, and it was a little more than halfway, and that ended up being a great stop. I got some nuts. I got some dried mango. I got let's see. I got something else good. I did get the Pop-Tarts for that calorie bump, as I mentioned on the show. Oh, the podcast. That's what triggered this. Of course, I got a question from one of the folks in the chat room about the snacks that I bring. And I did decide to mix it up a little bit this time. I did bring the Pop-Tarts. Didn't have grape. I have tried the grape. It's okay. Went with strawberry. It's a tough call. It's always a tough call. Strawberry versus brown sugar. Went with that. Told you I got the dried mango. Told you I got the peanuts. These are toffee-covered peanuts. Again, something I would normally never eat except on bike tour. But they were cheap too. Boy, peanuts are cheap and they're great for the calories and weight ratio to calories. You can throw some sugar coating on top of that. Holy smokes, what a deal. I feel like I got one other thing snack-wise. Oh, banana chips. So I mean, these are not, dried fruit is not, I would never call it healthy, but I'd say compared to some other forms of snacks that I tend to get on tour, thought it would be a little bit better. There's at least some fiber in them. And although they may be treated with a lot of sugar in them, that's actually not a terrible thing from my perspective on days like I've got coming up. Today is a 60-mile day. I'm not sure if I mentioned that. And it has been remarkably chill so far in terms of the riding. So just a lot of good things to say about things so far. One last thing, just to play cleanup with what's going on in my mind right now. I've always made a big deal before about riding from an airport, which of course I just did, but did it as if it was no big deal. And that's kind of because it really wasn't. Buffalo's airport is, a smaller regional airport. Nothing like some of the ones that I've ridden in out of recently. Tampa, LA, a few others I think I've done. Medford was Medford was a reasonably similar size, you know, one of those airports where the parking lot is literally in front of the airport. You know, when you're living in a bigger city like I do, that is not the case. So yeah, super, super easy. If you are considering flying to Buffalo and replicating this trip in some way, shape, or form, it was easy, very easy. Traffic was simple. While I would not say there was specific bike infrastructure, traffic was not bad, and there are sidewalks and shoulders, and it's real easy to get out, particularly if you're going north like I am. I believe that there is infrastructure which will connect you to downtown Buffalo if you wanted to go that direction to the extreme western terminus of the Empire State Trail, or if you wanted to go to Niagara Falls. But as all locals would tell you, then you want to go to Canada if you want to get the best view of Niagara Falls. It's just there's a better vantage point. And although we have a state park there on the New York side, city of Niagara Falls is kind of a economically depressed place. It's not, while it is a complete tourist trap on the Canadian side, kind of, you want to pick your poison here on this, there's just not a lot of there on the Niagara Falls, New York side. Although there are many people that disagree with me, and they are super down with the New York State side of things. I just think you get the classic view that you're used to seeing on the TV screens and on your internets from the Canadian side. And best of all, you can go to a Ripley's Believe It or Not museum, because I know that the demo is very strong here for Ripley's Believe It or Not folks. You may not even know what that means. All right, more to come. From Pendleton, New York, and the junction to the Empire State Trail, I am here. From this point on, it's pretty much all Empire State Trail. Some minor deviations, but I like to adopt the long hiking trail versions of routing that, you know, so long as you're kind of making your own route in the same basic direction and you end up rejoining, or there's some actually better way of stating all of this, you're still doing it. I will count this. Very excited to hop on the trail. The road route was perfectly fine. I will certainly have more road coming forward, but it'll be nice to get on a trail for a little bit. What a great frickin' day so far. I'm gonna snack up here a little bit before I hop on the trail, water up a little bit. I've only gone 10 miles, but it's only been an hour as well. Feels like I've talked to you for most of it, so I will probably not make this particular episode of the podcast any longer than it needs to be. I will be chatting again, of course, as we go further along, but just maybe not as frequently. All right, time to power up and get ready for the back 50 miles of the day.
So that is the end of part 1 for day 1. Join us in a couple of weeks and we will continue on the tour of the Empire State Trail for the second part of day 1. It was a lot of fun. Did this all go to plan? Well, you're just going to have to listen to find out. And as always, we like to close out the show with a special shout out to the Pedal Shift Society. Because of support from listeners like you, Pedal Shift is a weekly bicycle touring podcast with a global community, expanding into live shows and covering new tours. If you like what you hear, you can support the show for $5, $2, or even $1 a month. And there's one-shot and annual options. If you're not into the small monthly thing, check it all out at pedalshift.net/society. On to the society. Kimberly Wilson, Caleb Jenkinson, Cameron Lean, Andrew McGregor, Michael Hart, Keith Nagel, Brock Dittus, Thomas Skadow, Marco Lowe, Terrence Manson, Harry Telgadas, Chris Barron, Mark Van Ram, Brad Hipwell, Mr. T, Nathan Poulton, Stephen Dickerson, Vince LaGreco, Cody Florchinger, Tom Beninati, Greg Braithwaite, Sandy Pizzio, Jeff Muster, Seth Pollock, Joseph Quinn, Drew Porter, Byron Patterson, Joaquin Robber, Ray Jackson, Jeff Fry, Kenny Mikey, Lisa Hart, John Denkler, Steve Henkel, Miguel Quinones, Alejandro Aviles Reyes, Keith Spangler, Greg Towner, Jody Zeranin, Lucas Barwick, Michael Baker, Brian Bechtal, Reinhard Bigel, Greg Middlemiss, Connie Moore, William Gothman, Brian Benton, Joan Churchill, Mike Bender, Rick Weinberg, Billy Crafton, Gary Matushak, Greg Latoile Lopez, James Sloan, Jonathan Dillard, John Funk, Ronald Paroli, Dave Roll, Brian Hafner, Misha LeBlanc, Ari Messenger, David Grotke, Todd Grossbeck, Wally Estrella, Sue Reinert, John Lico, Stephen Granada, Philip Mueller, Robert Lackey, Dominic Carroll, Jackie McCullough, John Hickman, Carl Presso, David Neves, Patty Louise, Terry Fitzgerald, Peter Steinmetz, Timothy Fitzpatrick, Michael Azuski, Hank O'Donnell, David Zanoni, David Weil, Matthew Sponseller, Chad Reno, Spartan Dale, Carolyn Ferguson, Peggy Littlefield, Lauren Allensmith, Eric Burns, Thomas Pearl, Darren McKibben, Richard Stewart, Dave Fletcher, Jack Smith, Luke Parkinson, Ryan Patterson, Sarus Faravar, and thanks also to all past and anonymous folks for helping make this show happen. Thank you for joining. You can find Pedal Shift at pedalshift.net for more great bicycle touring content. You can hear the Pedal Shift project through Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast app. Opening music courtesy of Jason Kent off his self-titled album. The track is called America. Check out his band Sunfield's latest release, Mono Mono, wherever cool music is available.